Okay, so next up we have Lauren Weathers, and Lauren is getting her doctorate in clinical psychology at the University of Mississippi. So her research focuses on meaning in life, resilience, and post-traumatic growth, and she's going to be talking a little bit about some of the work that she's been doing and her lab has been doing. So take it away. You're welcome.
Hi, everyone. My name's Lauren. Along with being a doctoral student at the university, I'm a part of a lab that is called the Clinical Disaster Research Center. The co-author of this presentation is Dr. Stefan Schulenberg. He's a professor at the university, and he's also the director of the Clinical Disaster Research Center. For the purpose of this presentation, whenever I say our lab or the center, I'm referring to the Clinical Disaster Research Center, which is kind of like a lot to say, so whenever I talk about the center or the lab, that's what I'm talking about. So the title of our presentation is Meaning, Resilience, and Self-Efficacy, Studies of Mississippi Coastal Residents and the Deepwater Horizon Oil Spill. Before getting into my presentation, I kind of want to provide a quick overview about what I'll be discussing today. So first, I'm going to talk a little bit about the oil spill. I know we've all talked about it some today, and I know a lot of you have a lot of knowledge about the oil spill, but I quickly wanted to go over some things real quick. And then I wanted to talk about my lab's work with the oil spill. And then, specifically what I want to talk about is what we found in terms of meaning in life, resilience, and self-efficacy. And then I'm going to talk about the continued work of our center. So the oil spill was from April 20th, 2010 to September 19th, 2010. The aftermath of the oil spill included different ecological effects, such as marine life being affected, different ecosystems, economic because some people lost their jobs due to the impact that the oil spill had on the fishing industry and also the tourism industry. And there was also some psychological effects that happened as a result of the oil spill, which I'll be briefly talking about today. This oil spill is also distinct from other oil spills in that this area has been re-traumatized. Again, as eloquently stated by the other speakers today, this area had been hit by Hurricane Katrina, Rita, and Gustav. Also, the coast has a lot of diverse populations, a lot of different cultures, and some of those cultures have a mental health stigma. And so as soon as the oil spill happened, a lot of people who were affected psychologically by the oil spill didn't immediately seek services. For some of these individuals, it took them months to finally come around to receive mental health assistance. There's just like a unique history of the area in general. So the most common psychological reactions associated with disasters, which our team kind of took into consideration when we were forming what we were going to do in terms of research-wise, is anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, increased somatic complaints. So some people might start complaining about their head hurting or their stomach hurting, different physical complaints, which might be manifestations of some of the mental health stuff they were going through. And also different cultures kind of explain their mental health strife through physical complaints. Also, a common reaction to disasters is impaired relationships with others, and also we typically see people seeking services for mental health who wouldn't have normally sought services before. So now I quickly want to talk about, really gloss over the BP Behavioral Health Grant Program. So the Mississippi Department of Mental Health, MSDMH, used the funds received to create the BP Behavioral Health Grant Program, providing funds to 19 mental health organizations offering services to coastal residents. MSDMH then contracted Stefan Schulenberg at the University of Mississippi to create a research team to study different outcomes. And so what Stefan Schulenberg did was he created a university-based team of graduate students and also fellow faculty members to kind of create this team. So what were we specifically doing? We were contracted to assess interventions provided by agencies funded through the MSDMH grant program. So we tracked therapy, training, and outreach work in the area. And we assessed the psychological impact of the disaster with some of the variables that I kind of talked about a few minutes ago about like the common symptoms that we usually see post-disaster. So examples of variables we assessed were PTSD, depression, anxiety, stress, resilience, perceived meaning, and self-efficacy. We studied a lot more than this. We have a lot of numerous publications about our work on the oil spill, and some of that include other variables not listed here. For instance, we looked at socioeconomic status. For the purpose of this presentation, I'm just going to be briefly talking about these variables. If you would like to know more, feel free to contact me. I actually have a handout I can give you lovely people in the room with different citations. And also, my email is provided, and Stefan Schulenberg's email is provided. So for those who are watching remotely, we can get you copies of those papers or citations. But before I talk about some of the findings, I quickly want to go over how we define resilience, which is important because there's a lot of definitions for resilience out there, and a lot of these positive psych constructs. But we were, in general, looking at resilience as the ability to bounce back, recover from stress. Resilient individuals are people who are able to harness internal resources and also environmental resources that allow them to maintain a sense of well-being, even under stressful situations. Perceived meaning. So what is the meaning of life? Don't we all want to know? Overall, we conceptualize meaning in life as like this sense of coherence, this sense of direction or purpose. And so this is something that's very objective and very unique to different people. According to Viktor Frankl, who is one of the first psychologists to really emphasize the importance of meaning in life, he stated that meaning in life, life has meaning under all circumstances, including the events that are very stressful or where there's unavoidable suffering. So even during the hard times, people are able to have meaning in life or possess meaning in life. And also, there has been research in terms of making meaning in response to stress and finding or maintaining meaning following disasters, which is something our lab is very interested in looking at. And self-efficacy is the ability to organize and execute actions necessary to manage a given situation. So with self-efficacy, it's about not feeling hopeless, feeling in control, feeling like, you know, this disaster happened, but I still am able to handle it, and I am in control of myself and different actions. So some stuff about our study. We collected data at 19 facilities. 10 of these facilities were providing direct care to these individuals. We obtained 1,119 participants from Harrison, Hancock, Pearl River, George, Stone, and Jackson counties in Mississippi. 55% of our sample was female. The age ranged from 18 to 79. Our mean was about 39 years old. And then the majority of our sample was white at 68%. These were the measures that we administered to assess those variables that I talked about: resilience, meaning in life, self-efficacy, and also to kind of look at where they were at post-traumatic stress symptom-wise, and also depression, anxiety, and stress. So what we found was that about 39% of our sample reported significant post-traumatic stress at like a PTSD level, and that there was substantial worsening of their functioning across each life domain, such as finances, social relationships, and physical health. And we also saw that the lower the income, the more reported distress from the individuals. So what do we find in terms of meaning and resilience? We found that meaning and resilience were related, and also that both meaning and resilience were negatively related to post-traumatic stress symptoms. So what does this mean? The more perceived meaning you had, or the more resilience you reported, the less post-traumatic stress symptoms you exhibited, or that you reported that you had, at least from our sample. So meaning was equal to resilience in predicting fewer post-traumatic stress symptoms, which is very interesting and very important because, as I'll talk about later, meaning might be a variable that we could use to kind of strengthen communities or people before a disaster or following a disaster. In terms of what we found with meaning, self-efficacy, and life satisfaction, we found that meaning and self-efficacy were significantly related to one another positively, and that both meaning and self-efficacy predicted life satisfaction. So basically, the more perceived meaning in life people reported, the more self-efficacy people reported, the greater their life satisfaction. So some take-home points. Resilience and perceived meaning in life are similarly strong, significant predictors of fear post-traumatic stress symptoms. This is something that's very important as we're talking today about how can we make the coast more resilient, or how can we make our communities more resilient. And so we could work with individuals who are really struggling with a disaster, such as the oil spill, to talk about, to kind of help them with meaning making, help them kind of make more sense of their world, or try to figure out how to do that. And also try to increase their resilience or give them tools to be more resilient, because clearly perceived meaning in life and resilience, at least for our sample, buffered the post-traumatic stress symptoms. And also, self-efficacy and perceived meaning in life are similarly strong, significant predictors of higher perceived life satisfaction. So again, meaning in life is an important variable, not only to kind of buffer against post-traumatic stress symptoms, but it's also important in terms of bolstering perceived life satisfaction. Likewise, self-efficacy is something that we could do in terms of helping people who are coping with a disaster. Also, overall, meaning is critically important to a person's response to a disaster. So, future directions from this. Our lab and our center thinks it's very important to continue to study meaning as a catalyst for resilience, self-efficacy, and post-traumatic growth. Research should consider training, education, and positive concepts, the idea of inoculating people pre-disaster. So before a disaster happens, we need to see how prepared people are and what resources and tools they have already kind of in their tool belt to handle different events, and try to help them fine-tune their skills or to make them more prepared or more knowledgeable, so that when a disaster happens, we can maybe try to like buffer some of the negative symptoms that could develop, or maladaptive coping, if you will. And so, we want to look at more work that we can do in terms of pre-disaster. How can we get people prepared? Also, the positive concepts as elements of comprehensive post-disaster interventions and mental health settings. Right now, we're seeing a big boom with the positive psych literature, and that's been going on for a few years now, which is great because in the past, psychology really looked at what's wrong with people and maladaptive coping. And so if we can look at people who are resilient or who are able to bounce back after a disaster and see what resources or tools they have, that can maybe guide us to see what the people who are not coping as well, we can maybe help give them those tools. And so we think that the positive concepts should continue to be looked at. And we need to use the knowledge gained to enhance how we prepare for future disasters. And so this kind of leads me to kind of our center's work. So we have a research, teaching, and service component to our center. And so in terms of research, we really research meaning in life. And we're still looking at meaning as a potential to facilitate preparedness and as a catalyst for resilience. And incorporating meaning into interventions, studies post-disaster. Also in terms of teaching, Stefan Schulenberg teaches disaster mental health and positive psych courses at the University of Mississippi, and he also teaches American Red Cross courses. And so he does his best at the university to kind of train undergraduates and graduate students about disaster mental health and also positive psychology, and also the psychological first aid, being trained in that as a student, undergrad and graduate, is a really incredible experience. That's a really great component of our center. And also, there's a service component in terms of disaster preparedness, training and education, and disaster mental health response when disasters occur, and disseminating research to the community and the literature. So right now, some of the stuff that our center is doing is that we're trying to look at that kind of pre-disaster component. And so we're trying to see how much knowledge people have about how to handle natural disasters or even active shooter situations on the campus. Unfortunately, with the climate that we have, with all the active shooting situations, and at some of the different universities, it's important for us to know what do people actually know what to do about if that type of disaster happens, like what knowledge do they have, so that if we see any holes in their kind of knowledge, we can be like, actually, this is what you need to do, because it's amazing how some people don't know how to do certain things for certain disasters. And so trying to get them prepared, and also some of the stuff that we're doing at the university level now. And we're still disseminating the research that we gained from the Gulf oil spill and also from Dr. Schulenberg's research with Katrina. So I guess I'll answer questions later. Thank you.